Hi, this is Jay Holston with Moving the Needle, and I'm really excited today to be speaking with Mike Goldman. Mike spoke with one of my Vistage groups very recently, and I just really loved his content. And even more importantly, many of my members looked at like how he views and assesses people, and really have just taken it on and adopted it as the approach that they want to use. And so, I kind of have this little laboratory of 18 folks that are in my group that I can kind of see of the speakers, which ones they really gravitate to, excuse me, and Mike is definitely at the very top of the top. So I'm very happy to have you here today. And Mike, would you mind introducing yourself? Because just give a little bit of background, and then we'll jump in with some questions.
Sure. And Jay, thanks for having me. Mike Goldman, I'm a leadership team coach, a speaker, and an author of now three books, and really proud that my last book, called The Strength of Talent: How to Grow Your People to Grow Your Profit, is a USA Today bestseller. So that was kind of a
That
nice, a
is
nice
very
little
cool.
benefit on top of writing the book.
Mhm. Well, fantastic. And so, kind of one of the kind of huge takeaways, and really what I was thinking we might talk about today is so often everybody kind of has the cliche that the most important asset we have is our people. And one of the things that I really got out of your presentation is some irony in that statement. And so, do you mind sharing kind of what is your experience with regard to people being the most important asset? And if you find that to not be true, what wisdoms do you have that you can share with us?
Yeah, and irony is a nice way in my mind to say most companies say that, but it's a load of garbage. Like they don't
Yeah.
really mean it. But we hear that all
Um,
the time, right? People are our greatest asset, and it's almost a cliche. You say it's
mhm,
you just say it by habit. And I would argue for 98% of companies out there, it's just not true. It's just not, they're not making that a reality. And a way to think about that is if people are really your greatest asset, then as a CEO, as a senior leader, as a leader or a manager, your number one priority should be growing your people, coaching
mhm.
and developing your people. And I have very rarely seen any leaders that truly take that on as their number one priority.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's viewed much more often as a necessary evil than as their number one objective. And I'm sure there's exceptions to the rule, but absolutely. So let's put some meat on the bone. How, if you're able to design a system that would accomplish this as its ends, that would really help people with the coaching, would help people with accountability, because obviously a big piece of the coaching is to, have measurements. So that way you can, say, hey, here's where you're doing fantastic. Here's where we need to work. How what are your thoughts there? Do you have some ideas to how to maybe best do this?
Yeah, and I've actually been working with my clients over the past years to build a system that does this, and I call it the talent density system. And the what it really boils down to is number one, we need to set clear expectations with our team members. If we're going to make people growth our number one
Mhm.
priority, and I do believe that the number one driver of profit growth is people growth. It's not a new
Mhm.
strategy, it's not a new product, it's people growth. And people are going to get all that great execution done from your great strategy and your great products and your great markets. Well, we've got to start by aligning around a set of expectations. People need to know whether they're winning or losing the game from a productivity standpoint, from a culture fit standpoint. We need to assess people against those expectations. And when I say assess, it's not in an annual performance review. I believe annual performance reviews are the worst invention ever created in business. But as
Well, if it's a
leaders,
necessary evil, that's about you at least have to do it once a year, More would
well,
be better,
I don't believe it's a necessary evil. I just think it's an evil, right?
Okay.
Imagine you're the coach of a baseball team.
Hmm.
Are you going to wait until the end of the season to sit down with one of your best hitters who slumped all year and say, "Hey, I noticed something wrong with your swing. Let's talk about it now so you can improve it next season." Like you're not going
Hmm.
to wait till the end of the season to have that conversation. It's crazy.
Agreed. Right.
So we need to be constantly, continuously assessing people against those expectations. We need to be coaching and developing our people. And I think most leaders don't know the difference between coaching, training, development, holding people accountable, giving people advice. Those are all very different things and are all important in very different points in time. But we, as leaders, we need to be great coaches and great developers of people. And if people growth is really a priority, then we need to a way to hold each other accountable that we're actually doing it and we're actually seeing
Mhm.
the results. And that's a big miss that I see in organizations is if you if you're my VP of sales, I can hold you accountable for revenue, right? As a company, the CEO may be held accountable for net profit. But what are we doing to hold people accountable for growing their people? There's no measure for that. And I believe we need to measure people growth with the same rigor we measure profit growth.
So let's expand on that point. If you were to give recommendations for measuring people growth, kind of set the table for me. Kind of what are some of the approaches that you might use to do that?
Yeah, so the approach that I use is so in my model, this talent density system, when we assess performance, there are four different categories people fall into in performance. And these categories are not so you can go back and tell people what category they're in. These are
Right.
categories so that as leaders, we're talking a common language in how we assess people and accountability for coaching people. So there's what I very simply what I call high performing team members,
Okay.
medium
Great.
performing team members, and then there's two different types of low performing team members. One is called low producing, and the other is called low culture fit because we're measuring people against productivity and culture fit. So if you could imagine you've got this model where some percentage of your folks are high performing
Hmm.
and some other percentage of your folks are low performing in one of the two low performing categories, I've created a measure, a KPI called the talent density indicator. And the
Oh, I love
talent
it. That's
density
great.
indicator, yeah, very simply, the talent density indicator is the percent of your folks that are high performing, subtract from that the percent that are low performing, and if you're following that, you'll realize you get some number between negative 100% if you've got all low performing folks and no high performing folks, and positive 100% if you've got all high performing folks. If you've got all medium performing folks, then you're at a zero talent density indicator, zero high performing minus zero low performing. That number becomes a benchmark. There's no right number. Now, if you're negative, that's not too good, and you're probably not sleeping very well because you've got more low performing folks than high performing folks. But regardless of whether you're at negative 40 or 25 or 50, that becomes a benchmark. And you could
Oh,
use that benchmark to set goals and measure whether you are improving or not.
I can see how I could use that in my practice as a CEO coach because once I have the metric, I can look at it as an aggregate for the organization, but also, get their direct reports. And within that, ask them to help me understand, what's the development plan? And so, there's one set of a development plan for the high performing, to make sure that you keep them engaged and you keep them employed and retained. And then of course, there's other plans that you would have for the medium people and the low performing people. And that would be very helpful and a very good structure.
Yeah, and one of the biggest mistake I see leaders make, and I made for many, many years, is most leaders overinvest in their low performers and they
Mm.
underinvest in their high performers. Because for the low performers, it's kind of it's simple. All I need to do is take the 18 things they're screwing up, narrow it down to the top three, and give them advice how to fix it. Like I know how to work with my low performing folks, but what do I do for the folks that are better and smarter than I am? Like those are important folks. And frankly, that's where the real return on investment is. I should be investing more time with those highest performing folks to challenge them, to coach and develop them, to re-recruit them, to do career planning with them, to recognize them. We need to be spending more time with our best folks because those are the folks that are going to help us become great. Helping
Absolutely.
low performers get a little better makes you mediocre. Leveraging your
Sure.
highest performers makes you great.
I think I recall, reading somewhere that the high performers are like 300% better than the others in the company. And so all of a sudden, if you have this turbocharged employee that can really perform 300% of the work, um, that's dramatic. I had one of my members, he does service repair centers, predominantly for German cars. And the most difficult position for him is the front desk person because he goes, I have a hand, and it has a large organization. And so he has 8 locations. And so he has probably 200 or 300 employees. And he goes, I have, one or two of these front desk people that can do, 200 or 300% of the performance of the average. And so, it's just dramatic. They're able to, develop a rapport and communicate succinctly and effectively with the customer and help the customer understand how this is something not to procrastinate. This is something that there's a benefit of taking care of today. And just there's certain people that haven't. And he very much is trying to figure out how to put that in a bottle and do what he can, videotape them, do a learning management system of what they're doing, everything trying to better understand the DNA of those successful employees.
Yeah, and the thing to make sure he doesn't miss next time you talk to him, make sure he doesn't miss. Yes, you want to bottle that stuff and figure out how you could use what they do to coach and mentor other people, but also make sure you're helping those people, those great people who are already top team members for you.
Mhm.
How could you help them get better? Because your best people, if they are not growing with you, they're going to grow with someone else. So it's not just a matter of bottling what they have. That's super important. But how do you keep them challenged and raise the bar for them, teach them, coach them, mentor them, increase their responsibilities? What could you do for them so they keep growing, which is beautiful for them as individuals, but takes you to new levels as a company?
Very good point. Very good. And let me now take the conversation to the other side. Let's talk about the low performing for a second. Why do you feel, and I have my own theory, I'll jump in and give my answer in a second, but why do you think that the companies make the mistake of applying so much energy on their low performing?
Because we tend to focus on what's broken, right? It's natural to focus on what's broken. It is not easy. Working with the low performers is not easy, but it's kind of the simple solution. I could look at my top performers and go, thank God Jay is a superstar. I don't have to worry about him. I can go focus on my problem children. It's just a very natural thing to do.
So my answer to my question would be kind of a scarcity mindset. And so if I have some low performer, an engineer, whatever role might be in the organization, and he's just barely getting things done and barely kind of just keeping one step above being fired. Um, what makes sense to me is the second that you kind of decide to put him on a PIP plan, immediately walk down the hall to the recruiter and say, "Get me a virtual bench for this position." And it's because I'm giving him 90 days, but 90 days from now, I don't want to have that scarcity mindset. I really want to have 2 or 3 other candidates I can look at in comparison to them, and then I can make the decision for what's going to be best for the company.
Yeah, and that you just hit on probably the biggest reason I've seen why leaders don't take the action they should on low performing folks that can't be coached up, folks that are not a fit, but they stick around for 3, 6, 9, 12 months, sometimes 2 years. And it's because, well, I can't get rid of them because then I'll be short staffed. And it's
Mhm.
so hard to find good people these days. And that's a trap we fall into. And you mentioned, you used a phrase that I love. You called it a virtual bench.
Hmm.
And part of it is, we need to, the metaphor is kind of dig the well before you're thirsty. Like you need to be constantly out there recruiting, not job interviewing if you don't have a need for that position, but as a leader, what are you doing to build a virtual bench of potential superstars? Keep building relationships, keep getting introduced to great people who will introduce you to great people. So you've got a whole bunch of folks waiting in the wings, as opposed to if I fire this person, now I've got to start from scratch and put a job posting out on LinkedIn only to get 200 resumes and cover letters that all look alike. And now I've got to pick, and now, it's
Yeah.
just, it's a daunting task if you don't have that virtual bench.
It is daunting, and you hit on something that's very realistic. The reason they all look alike is because Chat GPT wrote all 200 of those cover letters and resumes, and so it is very daunting. And by having that virtual bench and making that investment to kind of have that inventory of people that can fit that position, that engineering position, or whatever that you know to scale your business, you're going to need many of this exact same role. That can be certainly the secret to success. There's just so many businesses that have that critical role that it's the limiting factor for them to be able to scale their business. I mean, I spoke with a prospect that was doing a home healthcare business, where if somebody is elderly, can't take care of themselves for whatever reason, doesn't want to go into independent or assisted living, so it's better to have the nurse come and see them in their house. Well, every home healthcare business is wanting that exact same nurse. And they're very, very hard to find because it's a very difficult job to do. And so the success is the ability to hire that constraint position. And so figuring out a whole process, a machine, a flywheel for building that virtual bench is the greatest way to build and scale your business.
Yeah, whenever I ask leaders how they have found their best team members, I have never once heard anyone say, I find my best people by putting a job posting on LinkedIn. Never heard that. Now, of course, we all
No.
do that and there are times where you need to do that. But the answer every single time is I found my best people through relationships. So what are you
Hmm.
doing to build those relationships? What are you doing to get the right kinds of referrals from the team members you've got that are great? That's where
Hmm.
you want to focus.
I completely agree. Well, Mike, it has been so fun to get a chance to chat with you and kind of bounce back and forth some of these various strategies. And you mentioned at the very beginning that you've written 3 books. Is there any more information you might want to provide around how people can, easiest find your book and maybe do you have a blog or an article that someone can follow to kind of stay in touch with your leadership ideas?
Yeah, so I'll give you three places, which is probably too many. But one is for my book, The Strength of Talent, the new book.
Hmm.
That's a USA Today bestseller. If you go to strengthoftalent.com, you'll be able to
Okay.
find everything out about that book, grab some resources and order the book. My website is just mike-goldman.com. And I have a podcast I'm super proud of called the Better Leadership Team Show, which you could find on my website or YouTube or Apple Podcasts or
Oh, wow.
Spotify or wherever we're listening to podcasts these days.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate your time today and look forward to chatting with you again. And congratulations on your book being, a USA Today bestseller. That's fantastic.
Thank you, Jay. This is fun.
Take care.